Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
It is a significant milestone for the Charlie Daniels Patriot Awards dinner, which will be held this upcoming September 11th, 2024 here in Nashville, Tennessee at the City Winery. The awards dinner is a program of the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project, which is a 501c3 that supports military veterans, first responders, and their families. This year marks the 10th anniversary of the program, co-founded by country music legend Charlie Daniels, along with his longtime manager, David Corlew. Although Daniels passed in 2020, his musical legacy lives on, and his devotion to veterans causes continue through the dedication of Corlew. Through fundraising events, the organization supports the efforts of other not-for-profit organizations, providing services to U.S. veterans and first responders, selected for providing the most meaningful work with the lowest overhead. This project has raised more than $4 million for these organizations. Sitting across the podcast table from me is Charlie's longtime manager, David. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate so much you having me. Anytime I get a chance to spread the good word, it's wonderful.
Well, first of all, this is close to home for me. Anybody that knows my wife and I, we're a military family. We're also a first responder family. Of all of our 8 kids, half of them either served in the armed forces or have served in law enforcement.
What an honor. What a gift.
We wear that hat quite proudly. We are so proud of our kids. And we always love to hear about and see organizations such as the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. But before we even go there, I want to take it back a step in time and talk about you and Charlie, and you were his manager. How did David Corlew meet Charlie Daniels, and how did that all come about? Because this is quite the journey you two were on.
Yeah, for me, I love my legacy. I love how because I grew up in Nashville. I'm a Nashville native, 5th, 6th generation Tennessee native. I went through the 70s. I say went through the 60s and 70s. In the 60s, I had come out of high school. I was a street kid. I grew up in a pretty tough environment. 10 people in a 4-room house over on West End and Murphy Road over there. 440 took our house away. And so grew up on the streets, didn't finish high school, pretty lost probably in the late 60s, early 70s. And I was shooting dynamite. I worked for a track drill company that shot dynamite that blows up. You see, when you go down the interstate, you see the lines in the rock.
Right.
We shot rock. And November, it was really cold. And I thought, I need an inside job. I need somewhere where I can be warm. And Scott Shannon, who's a really famous music, a radio personality who started pirate radio, ended up in New York, is one of the top jocks, but he started here in Nashville at WMAK. And he had a record store, and it was called Sgt. Pepper's. It was in Hillsborough Village, right across from Pancake Pantry. And in 68, 69, that was like the Haight-Ashbury of Nashville. It was the hippie movement. We had all the universities, so all the kids were there. The guy that ran Pancake Pantry was a ex-Marine. He hated long hairs. They had a protest going all the time out front of Pancake Pantry. And so I sat across the street and sold records and watched them toss long hairs out on the street. So I worked in that record store, and it was such a melting pot for music, too, because of Music Row being right there. And so I started meeting a lot of the people that came in the music. Chris Christopherson, a lot of the old-timers were coming in. I say old-timers now, but they were young musicians, but they loved music, so they were buying all their music there. But we sold pipes and bell-bottoms and all the paraphernalia. But anyway, I met Charlie there. And we got to have a conversation, and then when for some reason, and I don't know why, because there's no musical person in my family, I was so, I just dove into album liner notes, and I would just literally sit there and read liner notes. I loved liner notes, and I fell in love with the Allman Brothers, as any Southern boy would, and so I just loved music, and it was I fell in love with it. And meeting Charlie, saw where Charlie had played on the Bob Dylan record, so knew who he was. And so out of that, we got to be friends. And one time he had a job opening to drive a van for the equipment. Somebody else got the job, and less than like 6 or 8 months later, I went to see him at the Exit Inn. And he asked me if I wanted a job, and this was in late 72, and he said, and that was when Uneasy Rider was coming out, and I ended up getting hired in April of 73. Got postponed. His father passed away. And in April 1973, Charlie had 2 1971 Chevrolet vans. One held equipment, one had players in it. And I got a job, $50 a week. And I saw America through the windshield of a Chevrolet van. My first roommate was Billy Cox, who was Charlie's bass player and who was part of the Band of Gypsies, played with Jimi Hendrix. So I just continued to develop my love for music, and I just had, even early on, I mean, we were touring with Wishbone Ash, but War, but we would play with some of the Southern bands, and so I just I found my home. I just loved it. I fell in love with seeing America and traveling and being in a different town every day.
I remember seeing Charlie Daniels for the first time, and I don't know if it was a co-headline tour or who was headlining it, but it was Charlie Daniels Band and Marshall Tucker. And I remember that the semis had they had murals painted on the side. And I thought, who are these guys? I've got to go buy a ticket and go to the show. And I was just blown away by the energy on the stage. That was probably 74, 75, something like that. And just the artistry, I mean, was just so amazing. And it really was my first introduction to, I don't know if you'd call it Southern rock, but it was definitely Southern music. And that journey that you were on, at what point was it determined that you were going to start managing Charlie Daniels' affairs?
Well, I'd started out, and I was going to say about Southern music, Charlie always felt like Southern music was a lifestyle more than it was a genre of music. It was a group of lower middle-class white kids that had tapped into WLAC and from the blues, and then, he always said the Marshall Tucker Band was the epiphany of a jazz and country mix, and the Allman Brothers were a blues band and jazz, and Leonard Skinner he always called the purest rock and roll band there was, and then we were just kind of a culmination. But like everything, I started out doing everything. I was setting up equipment and things, and then started working a little bit with the lighting board, and when we were able to hire a few other guys. Uneasy Rider was a hit, so our budget, we got a little more money, and then I became the road manager, and then when you saw that tour with all the tractor trailer rigs in. I was a little more sophisticated. I was the tour director. I had 59 people on the road.
Holy cow!
And then as we went through that, Charlie had a manager. And they obviously, there became a point in the mid-'80s that music had changed. We were coming out of the urban cowboy thing, and we went into that cosmopolitan era of John Denver and Anne Murray. And what happened, just a little back note, is that we were signed in New York at CBS, so we were a rock band. We toured. We never played a fair. We didn't do it. We played with the Allman Brothers, with Marshall Tucker, with Skinnerd. And when that transition in music happened, is about the same time with Urban Cowboy. And Urban Cowboy made Devil Went Down to Georgia a huge hit. The downside was it pigeonholed us as a country act, and we just weren't a country act. And so when that happened, CBS immediately moved us to Nashville. And Charlie was not a country act. He did not like the Nashville system in the 60s and 70s. So that's why we did all our records at Capricorn. And then as it happened, we weren't making as much money. His popularity started to wane, and he decided to leave his manager. And we had a few years of struggle and of just operating on our own. And finally, one day, I just asked him, I said, instead of you hiring another manager, give me a shot. I've been with you from the start. And he said, I'll give you 6 months. And because I think when I look back, I don't think Charlie ever looked at me at that time as a manager. I think I was more like his brother, son, partner. I mean, we were partners of the road. And so I think it took him back a little bit, but evidently I did good in that 6 months, and then I think it was in 1988, 89 when I officially became his manager. And I think I did a good job. He kept me around.
I was going to say, you were with him for how long as manager?
Well, from 1988 till 2020, so what is that, 30 years?
Some odd years,
30 some odd years. I was with him a total of 47 years when he passed away.
Which is so interesting when you think about our business. It is such a transitioning environment constantly. You know, artists are jumping labels, artists are jumping managers, the band members are interchangeable. I think that says a lot about you and Charlie together.
I think if I made an impact on Charlie's career, what started happening in those years, obviously the Music Row was changing. He had been with CBS for years, which became Sony. New presidents and vice presidents and stuff, and he had always wanted to make a record with Jimmy Bowen. And so we went to Capitol, and we went to Capitol for a couple of records. He made a couple of records with Bowen. And then when Scott Hendricks and Walt Wilson came in, they had Strawberry Wine, and they dropped Charlie.
Oh, my gosh.
And so Charlie wasn't happy. He had always had a record deal. And so what I'm saying is, if I made a difference, I have spent some time with Bowen. Bowen was a mentor to me. And he said, you just need Charlie. Charlie needs to go back and play the music he used to play. And that's when we started a label. So Blue Hat Records created the opportunity for him to continue to make records. Certainly we weren't having hits, and we weren't selling millions of records, but we were selling thousands of records. And it was profitable. And so as a manager, if I made an impact, I think I provided an opportunity for Charlie to continue to make records. And that's really what he had control of. Once it's out in the marketplace, he realized he didn't have control over it. But he still got to go through the process of making records.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for a couple of our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with David Corlew.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter, or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
Back in the studio here on the business side of music, you would not believe, ladies and gentlemen, the conversation that David Corlew and I just had during the break. You know, normally during the break, we get the commercial spots in and then we come back online. But this conversation we had, I think, went on for about 10 minutes or so. And just some amazing stories. And that's what we're going to talk about now, which is the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project, which is the 501c3. As I said in the beginning notes, supports military veterans, first responders, and their families. And, of course, this year marks the 10th anniversary. And this was co-founded by Charlie Daniels and you. And this Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project, let's talk a little bit about what it's about, and then I want to dig into who's going to be attending this event on what is very much a notable day, which is September 11th, 2024, which is an anniversary of sorts for this country that, for those that lived through it, we never forgot.
Poignant date,
yeah.
A very poignant date in our American history, world history. Journey Home Project started, and I'll make this quick. Journey Home Project started, Charlie and I in the band, CDB, the team, we worked every military base during the 80s there were, during the Cold War, And so when the trade towers came down, Charlie wanted to be one of the first to go to Iraq and entertain, and we did that. And so anyway, as it came about, because Charlie was such a patriot, we got hundreds of requests a year to do free shows and to raise money. And we decided, we handpicked a few organizations when the trade towers had come down to support. And some of them, after a few years, hit some bumps in the road, maybe some misspending and stuff. And we decided if we were going to raise money in Charlie's name, and then we would be stewards of that money, then why not start our own foundation? That way we can oversee it. We can report back to our donors and tell them where their money went. And we know where it goes, and we can make a choice and hopefully wise choices.
And control the dynamic a little better.
Exactly. And because we were small and we had no intentions of ever becoming Wounded Warriors or Tunnels for Towers, I mean, we just weren't. We were in the music business. We weren't in the fundraising business. So we decided to stay small and be kind of a quick response team. But we also admitted to ourselves that we didn't know what veterans needed. We didn't want to claim that we knew what they needed. So that's why our charter, what I still do today, is go out and identify organizations that are doing good work that we think is effective and in different areas of what soldiers' needs are. But our mission statement is to support the return, the rehabilitation, and the reintegration for a soldier or first responder back into civilian life, because that's the transition that is the problem behind our suicides, our mental I don't want to call it a sickness. It's
a mental health.
Mental health.
Yeah.
Mental wellness, and education. We figured out education now. There's benefits enough that most veterans that want to go to school, you can figure that out. But the mental wellness continues. It's generational now. We've got kids that are committing suicide because they either feel like they're carrying the load for their family or they're seeing disruption and pain in the family. And so it's generational now. It's going, the kids that in late 1990s, kids joined the military for an education because there had not been a war. Was no plans for a war. And they joined in 97, 98, and in a couple of years they found themselves in the middle of the desert fighting. Those kids are retiring now. They've been in the service 20 plus years. And there's a lot of issues, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and it's hard to watch.
And I find it especially interesting that a music-based, or at least a music-founded organization is stepping up to the plate to make this happen. It's almost unheard of because you see so many non-entertainment, non-musical organizations, if that makes sense. But you don't see too many opportunities like this reaching out to the veterans and the first responders. You see a need, and it's a genuine need. You know, I shared the story of our kids who served in the military and in law enforcement, and what they've gone through, and it's not isolated. I mean, it's almost every family deals with these things on pretty much a daily.
Well, you know, I set obviously Korea, Europe, all over, and then Iraq, Afghanistan, Kosovo, Bosnia. I stood behind Charlie, and because Charlie was such a friendly guy. People, if you met Charlie one time, people would say, "I know you knew Charlie." But when the kid in Iraq, when you're sitting in Al-Assad, and a kid comes up to him, and Charlie would always say, "Where are you from, son? Where are you out of?" And the kid would go, "I'm from Omaha, Nebraska." And Charlie would be able to say, "I love that barbecue place on the corner of 3rd and West Street." And that brought an extra sense of home to that young man or woman. And so there was an immediate attachment. So when those kids started coming back from the war, I was getting mail and emails going, "I met you guys," and we started communicating, and we realized the pain and the suffering that they were going through. So we had it was a God-given choice. We owe, as Charlie says, an impayable debt of gratitude.
When we talk about these stories, is there a certain unique success or a specific family or an organization that was helped out by this that you could share?
I think the story that I revert back to, and obviously we've had the Vietnam War, War on Terror. I have a lot of stories, but one that's really impactful is a first responder that living in the Mount Juliet community. Won't use his name, but I knew him. We helped Mount Juliet Police Department when the 2 officers died on Interstate 40. We did a fundraiser immediately. I was caught in the traffic, was right there when it happened. But I had a friend that was a police officer during that time, and I just saw him 5 years ago. I ran into him at a restaurant. And he came to me and he started sobbing. And I asked him, "What is wrong?" I mean, he's in his 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And he said, "I have PTS from Vietnam." And I said, "I didn't even know that you were a soldier." Of course, that was the era where it was shameful to be a soldier. And he said, "I need help." He said, I don't know if I can live." when I started reaching out to organizations or treatment centers, they said, we only take post 9/11 veterans. So here I've got a guy that's mid-60s, late 60s, 70s probably. And
who obviously needs help.
And I can't get mad at the center, but and so I reach out. I'm a little lost. I reach out to a Marine friend of mine who had just started an organization, a songwriting program, Operation Song. And I said, man, I've got a Vietnam veteran, and this friend of mine, his name is John Taylor. He's part of the Tootsies group down there, and he was in the Tet Offensive. He was all over Vietnam. And he said, send him to me. And I said, what are you doing? He said, I got a songwriting program that we started out at the VA. It's a 6-8 week program. Get him out here tomorrow. And I sent him out there. Now, he's great.
Wow. And who would have thought that there would be a songwriting program specifically for that?
And what it did, it allows these veterans to be in a small knit group and get to open up. And music affects the same part of the brain that PTS does. That's why when we get depressed, we put on music, we put on headsets, we isolate, and it affects the same part of the brain. So you get a group of 10, 12 guys in a room, and there's always going to be that one in the corner that's not going to talk. It's going to be my friend. He don't want to talk about it. In 50 years, he hadn't talked about it.
Right.
But somebody says something in that room, and it triggers him, and he'll say something and realize that he's not shamed for that. And then it just dominoes. Then the songwriter, the professional songwriter, he takes that one thing that guy said, turns it into a melody, and then all of a sudden, a couple hours later, they're regurgitating all of this stuff. They're just like talking and friendly, and
the floodgates are opening.
Yeah. Then 8 weeks later, you got a different guy that feels better. And I take no credit for it, but every time I see him, he goes, you saved my life. I said, no, God saved your life.
Yeah.
I was just in the right place at the right time.
You were the conduit.
Yeah, and I don't even take, I was just there. I just happened to be the guy he needed to talk to that day. And I love that story. I love that story because it has no medical attachments or centerpiece of some kind of medicine or drug or something. It was just it's pure love and music that healed him.
We're going to take another break, get a word in for a couple more of our sponsors. And when we come back, I'm blown away by this conversation. And I don't ever say that on the show, but we're going to have some more conversation with David Corlew.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names: marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof, building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
Back in the studio with David Corlew. Once again, the conversations off the clock are as interesting as during the show. So let's talk a little bit about the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. 10th anniversary. The event this year is on 9/11. 2024 at City Winery here in Nashville. Who's going to be honored this year?
Well, what we did before Charlie passed, we talked about creating, we didn't know how long Journey Home Project would last, so we decided that we talked and we said, if we created a Charlie Daniels Patriot Award, it's like, Charlie was a great patriot. Who wouldn't want a Patriot Award from Charlie Daniels?
Right.
We figured if we created that award, and so that's when we went from just a fundraiser to the Patriot Awards dinner. And so every year we give a award to a entertainment person that has supported the military and worked hard. We usually do a veteran or first responder with a Patriot Award, and then a company or foundation that supports us, as well as in spirit supports other foundations too. One
of the things I want to bring up before it leaves my mind, during one of our breaks, we talked about a family that was, and please correct me if I get it wrong, the Benghazi family?
No, this is the family that we're going to honor this year, and this is the first time we've highlighted first responders. One of the recipients this year is Bernie Carrick, who is the New York Police Commissioner during 9/11.
Okay.
He's getting a Patriot Award, but he is also going to host the segment. We're going to honor a family. They're the Vigianos.
Okay.
They're legendary firefighters, police officers, generational in New York City, New Jersey. And the story is John Vigiano, the patriarch of the family, was served during the 60s and 70s with the fire department. And then all the way up to the point where when the trade towers were hit, he had two sons that went into the towers. One was a police officer, one a fireman. Different towers. He lost both of his sons. When he lost those sons, out of those two sons, they had three sons. And those three sons now are Marines and a police officer. All three decorated. And so we're going to honor three generations of 9/11 warriors, heroes, and
at this event,
our event.
Yeah.
So the Vigiano family's coming down. One of the sons, maybe two of the sons, are coming. One of the wives of one of the fallen Vigianos. So we're going to have a table full of them, but we're going to bring 9/11 is such a poignant time, and it was a wonder. It was a tragic time, but our country came together on 9/11. So we're hoping that our event becomes that. I'm going to go back to my past, the love fest of honoring these great people, these great families.
How can people get tickets to the event?
You can go to the Charlie Daniels Journey Homeproject.org. There's information on the site there. You could contact the winery, but the best place is the Charlie Daniels Journey Home Project. That's where we're having the event, the winery in Nashville. But on our site, it gives the information. We have a lot of returning customers that support us, and so tickets are going fast. And we're actually we got another thing going on. We're going to have a run. We're going to have some guys that'll run with a piece of metal from Under Armour in Mount Juliet to downtown during the day, and they're going to be carrying a 22-pound piece of steel from one of the towers.
Oh my gosh!
They're going to run 22 miles that day. So we're going to make it a big day for Nashville and the awareness of the need to help these men and women.
Those that can't attend the event, how can they help?
Couple of ways. You can always go to thejourneyhomeproject.org and donate. There's a donate button if you can. If you can't, spread the word. Spread the word about Journey Home Project. Of course, we want your support. We're gonna do well with the money you can donate. If you can't, spread the word about anybody, any organization that contact us and go, we don't want to give money to you, but we'd like to do something, and I'll give you a list of people to donate to. My journey is, I want to say, bigger than my own organization or our own organization. I just need for people to be aware that there are so many men and women struggling. I want you to give money, give love, call a battle buddy, call a friend, Thank a soldier, a fireman, a police officer, but remember to thank his family. They serve too. They get the domino effect, the collateral damage of our warriors falls on the family. So put an arm around somebody. That's good enough for me. Everything else is as Charlie would say, gravy.
Here's a shout out to our loyal listeners. Without all of you, we wouldn't be one of the most listened to music industry interview podcasts, including achieving #1 status in many countries around the world, according to the Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show, please check out our Facebook page at the Business Side of Music Podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on the Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. You can check out our video webcasts there and get to see me and our guests, such as David here in the studio. Last but not least, check out and follow us on X, we used to call it Twitter, at Biz Music Podcast. That's BIZ Music Podcast. David, God bless you and what you and Charlie started. This is amazing, and whatever we can do to help to get the word out there, we will.
You already have. Thank you, and God bless you and your family.